All right, we are here. Hi,
We have people. Yay.
we have people. Yay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started because we don't want to make people wait for sure. So let's do that. I'm going to twist this around so you can't see my coat hanging on the rack. And let's get going. Hi, everybody. I am going to share my screen and actually. Heather, you are going to be manning the um,
The Q&A.
Q&A, right? So I'll give instructions on that here in a minute. Okie dokie. So, everybody, we are so excited to have you here and just thrilled that you guys want this education. I am Sandra Nardoni, and this is Break Free from Antibiotics, a homeopathic mindset for infections. It is actually going to be almost identical to what we taught last week. We just sort of rebranded it to be a little bit more Facebook friendly because the last one had the word heal in it, and Facebook doesn't like that name. So we wanted that to be something that we could do without worrying about that. So we renamed it. But it is so great to be here tonight. How many of you had a relaxing weekend and you feel like a little bit rejuvenated and it's been, you maybe today's been busy, but you had some good things happen on the weekend. I hope everybody had that like I did. I had a good weekend with my family. We moved my son and played games with him in his new place. So he was super excited about that. Um, so in the next 90 minutes or so, we're going to be covering so much information and it's going to go by really fast because it's going to blow your socks off. So be sure to lock in and focus and have your notepad and pencil ready because it's going to be over before you know it. And I want you to absorb as much as possible. It's going to feel like, even though it's a lot of great information, by the end, you're going to be energized because you're going to be armed with what you need to go out and apply this knowledge the next time your husband or kids or grandkids or whoever you love gets an infection. And even though you may feel a little overwhelmed a bit at times, um, this is going to be such great information that that overwhelm is going to turn into energy as you discover what we have to teach you today. And I hate to say it, but I think some of you by the end of this are actually going to be looking forward to somebody getting an infection. I mean, I know that sounds horrible, but it's it's kind of like that when you learn something new, you want to apply it right away, right? So buckle up and get ready to be empowered by what is sure to change your life like it has ours, right, girls? Okie dokie. See if my slides will actually turn. There we go. So, welcome to Break Free from Antibiotics. We're going to give you some great information tonight about how to use homeopathy to avoid the use of antibiotics. And then we're going to give away a free membership to our new homeopathy help hotline membership. You definitely want to stay till the end. And it will be about a 90-minute presentation. We're going to do our best to keep it right at that 90 minutes. And as soon as we're done, we're going to give away that one membership and then we're going to be done. So, but we want to give a quick disclaimer before we introduce ourselves that we are not doctors and any information you hear or see in this presentation is purely educational. I should say it like this, purely educational and should not be considered medical advice. There, that is what we did. So, if you think that we're medical doctors, we are quite honored that you think that we went to school for that long, but we didn't. But that's the cool thing about this. People can learn this without spending 12 years at school. So that's a really good bonus actually. But we are not doctors, so anything you learn here, just remember we are educators. We are not physicians. So let's do some quick introductions. Some of you might be new to us and don't know who we are. And I want to start by saying that we're all practical homeopaths. We all graduated from the same school. And now we work together to produce a homeopathy podcast and serve our clients through collaboration. And today we are basically going to be telling you about one more joint effort, um, which is a membership that we just launched. And So that is what I'm referring to when I say we're going to give away a membership at the end. But Nicole, would you give us like 2 sentences about yourself? We're going to kind of circle back around this. So don't give away too much, but just a real quick brief thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, guys. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Nicole Pavlik. I'm a registered nurse, gone holistic, and turned practical homeopath. I'm a mama of 7 children, and I'm a wife to my best friend over 20 years. So I'm so excited you guys are here. It's nice to meet you guys.
Heather, your turn.
My turn. My name's Heather Strickland, and um, I guess I'm an empty nester, have been for a few years. And my husband and I live in Northeast Ohio, and we have a really spoiled Aussie Doodle. So,
I am Sandra Nardoni, and I have been a empty nester for 2 days. Um, our middle son, who did move out, had moved back in because of not having a roommate and trying to figure out a way to live on his own in this horrible economy. He's been sleeping on our couch for the last 3 months, and I love him to death. But boy, am I glad to get a grown man off that couch. So we are we are empty nesters now. We also have an oldest son and a youngest daughter, and a granddaughter named Esther. So I'm a Mimi. And yeah, and I've been married to my husband for 30 years in April, which is kind of hard to believe. Met him in 1984 at church in the eighth grade. So that's a quick introduction to us. So here's a little result disclaimer. This is what you're going to expect from this information. You're not going to immediately know how to combat every infection with homeopathy after you watch this. If that's your expectation, I am sad to say it's not going to happen. At first, when I was looking for alternatives, I just wanted to help my kids. And you might have something specific in mind to solve too. And so, if that's the case, here's some good steps to take. If you want to know how to avoid antibiotics, step one, start your education today, which is you're already doing that because you're listening to this presentation. Step two, learn the remedy or remedies that will keep you from using antibiotics on the most common things that your family gets. And that is also hopefully going to be something that you'll find out tonight. Step three, grow your knowledge. Build on that first bit of knowledge as often as you can. And we're also going to give you a path to do that. I have currently solved these things in my family: night terrors, depression, anxiety, high blood pressure, diabetes, infections, disassociation, carpal tunnel, arthritic knees, back pain. And actually, I've added one more thing to the list because I was diagnosed with gout and I started taking the Banerjee protocol for it this week. And within 24 hours, all my pain was gone. So apparently, I've solved that too. I thought, why does my toe keep hurting and I haven't heard it? It was just such a weird thing. And then it swelled up. And anyway, so yeah, I would add gout to that. Although, doesn't gout sound like a gross thing to have? I hate saying that I have gout, but oh well. Anyway, so I didn't start knowing how to solve everything, and you're not either. So that's just a little quick disclaimer about what to expect. Now that you know we're not going to solve all your most pressing problems tonight, we're going to really get started in earnest. Most of you came here with a story or an experience. You started out in life or in motherhood as a normal person, quote unquote, the kind of person who bought regular detergents, had no idea what a GMO was, and wasn't all that concerned with the alternative health world. Then something happened. Maybe you developed a food allergy. Maybe your baby was having trouble with mysterious rashes, or maybe you had something even more devastating happen in your family that pushed you to do research. You found out that there were chemicals in our food, that there were toxins and other horrible things being given to our kids at the pediatrician's office. And you wondered if there was more you could do to protect your family. And honestly, some of you may still be in the normal category, and that's okay. You haven't crossed that bridge and become a nerd like us who knows what the acronym GMO stands for, and that's okay. The point is, something drew you to this topic of avoiding antibiotics. And I had that motivation too. And we are hoping that we can help you over that bridge and at least start that journey tonight. So this is why I started on the journey that you are on right now. This is my boy, Dakota. This is the guy that is now well over 200 pounds and was sleeping on my couch. He is on an outing at an ice cream shop in this picture with me, his sister, my husband, and our biological son in this picture. I want you to look at his eyes. There really isn't a smile in them, even though he's holding an ice cream cone, because a few weeks ago, he was told that the foster family he loved was not going to adopt him and his sister. He's out with us because we will be his new family. He's sad, he's angry, he's confused, and he feels rejected. All that stuff is going on in his little 6-year-old brain and in his heart, and it will translate into violent tantrums and a 6-year battle with incontinence. Him and his sister are a big reason why I'm talking with you today. My story starts here, all the way back in 2006, when he finally moved in with his little sister, who was far more physically violent than he was. But he had such horrible night terrors that we had to sleep on an air mattress outside his bedroom door to keep him safe at night. He was on several high-powered psychotropic drugs like Abilify and Clonidine, and in spite of those, these night terrors continued night after night. We were exhausted. But we also knew that we wanted a natural solution that would help Dakota, whose name is now Gabe, heal for real. And we needed to connect with him and bond. And that's really hard when you're completely sleep deprived. Back then, I didn't know anything about homeopathy. I knew about supplements, essential oils, botanicals, herbalism, and I learned a lot about clean foods along the way. But homeopathy was not on my radar. Funnily enough, though, without knowing it, I did end up solving Dakota's night terrors with homeopathy. But we're going to get back to that story here in a little bit. When I say the word homeopathy, I want to know what you think of. I thought it was all the things I just listed. If you guys wouldn't mind, in the Q&A, I don't know that I gave this instruction, but we do have the chat turned off so that we're not distracted. But the Q&A is open. And I'd like you to type in, if you already know a lot about homeopathy, type in what you thought it was before you knew what it was. And if you're new to homeopathy, type in what you think it is right now. Because I know that I thought I knew what it was, but I was totally wrong. You can use homeopathy alongside of all those other modalities, but it doesn't belong in any of those other categories. I like to think of homeopathy as the great balancer. It's actually its own system of medicine. But just to make sure you're on the same page and to give you the opportunity to skip out of this presentation quietly with no hard feelings, let's go over who homeopathic education is for. Homeopathy education is for people who have tried supplements, herbalism, botanicals, and other alternatives but have not truly gotten healing. People who are happy with supplements, herbalism, and other alternatives but want to up their game and be even more effective in helping their families. Beginners to alternative health who have no idea about any of it, and experienced students who know a lot but want to learn more. People who want to have another tool in their tool belt to avoid the doctor and hospital stays. Those who are concerned about another pandemic and who want to have the power to care for themselves and their families. And it's not for those who believe conventional treatments are the only way to deal with illness. You're not going to be happy in this community if that's your perspective. So we are totally good if you are like 100% on board with everything your doctor says and you never question him and you never, ever, ever think he's wrong, then you may want to just go ahead and we can part as friends. But not that doctors aren't good people. I don't think that at all. I think they are very good people who have been misinformed by the systems that they're trained by. So I just want to put that out there. So all that to say, homeopathy is what finishes what you've most likely already started. I believe it's the best way to fully take back your health and have total control, not relying on the medical world that laughs when you say you don't always have to have an antibiotic for strep throat. If you know your medicines, you can absolutely and confidently manage your family's health with homeopathy and only need the doctor or hospital in an emergency where surgery or extremely quick action is needed. I really believe that. And I believe that this is the most effective way to avoid antibiotics nearly every time you face an infection. Even other natural modalities often don't make the cut when the stakes are high. So this is why we decided to create a membership to teach you more. We all love to teach, and we wanted there to be a place where moms, grandmas, aunts, and cousins could gather together to learn about this gentle but powerful system of medicine. It's called the Homeopathy Health Hotline. And we're going to be teaching you some simple strategies about using remedies in place of antibiotics tonight when common illnesses creep into your home. But in the membership, we are going to be teaching you so much more and going so much deeper. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So stay tuned. So, who are we? We are certified practical homeopaths who don't only have experience helping clients getting better using homeopathy, but we're also educators, frequently teaching the concepts of homeopathy to others. Nicole is a nurse and is the head of homeopathy for remnant nurses. She's also raising 7 children and home educating them. Congratulations, Nicole. As you can see, she's still beautiful and wonderful, and I don't know how she does it. I have a degree in education, and I was a therapeutic foster parent and an adoptive parent. And I got my kids off psychotropic meds when they were on several. They had attachment issues as well, lots of diagnoses behind their name, and we were able to get them off of that. They did bond with us. I also homeschooled for 17 years. I ran my own school for kids that learned alternatively, and I've just done a lot with education. So I'm a teacher at heart. And now I'm a practical homeopath. Heather is also an adoptive parent, so we have that in common. We both adopted children that were older, which is a challenge in and of itself, and has experience with the kinds of struggles that parents of older adoptive kids face. She also has experience caring for the elderly with homeopathy, has a really big heart for the elderly. I know for some of you who don't know us, knowing this information is pretty important to see who's teaching tonight. So I hope that clears up the basic questions you may have about us. And I think that sums up the intro so we can jump back into the educational piece of tonight. So as I was saying, my big need for homeopathy started with our adoption. And back in 2007, after Dakota and Billy moved in with us, we really only knew about herbalism and supplements. And for the most part, we worked to heal their issues with what we knew. There were certain things, though, like Dakota's night terrors and Billy's food allergies that were just not touched by supplements. And this is a picture of Billy very soon after we adopted her. And she looks so sweet in that picture. But let me just tell you, she hurt me so much. And by the way, I have permission to talk about my kids. They are fantastic. We've had conversations about this. Every few months I check in. I'm like, hey, are you still okay with me talking about how violent you were when we got you? And they're like, yeah, sure. They don't care. They want to help other people because they know how bad it was. They lived through some of it. I mean, they don't remember a lot of it, but they lived through it. They know the trauma. They know how many kids get given back because their parents don't know how to deal. And so they really want this information to get out there. So I've talked to them about that. I don't want you guys to think I talk about my kids without asking their permission. Besides the fact that the allopathic drugs were not really helping them, we were worried about side effects. Many psychotropic drugs come with intense side effects, and we felt that little children at this age, they were 5 and 6, did not have these chemicals being pumped into their bodies every day. And that said, they were violent and aggressive, and we were not sure what would happen if we took them off the drugs. Would things be even worse? At this point, we were already dealing with 5 to 10 violent tantrums each from them daily, and I could not imagine dealing with more. The bottom line was knowing the drugs were bad wasn't enough. We needed to know we could live with them off the drugs. How were we going to help them truly heal? We were dealing with violence, tantrums, and one of the worst things was Gabe's night terrors. All of this in spite of the meds. And I know some of you are in similar situations, maybe not with drugs that your kids are on, although you might have that issue too. You might just be saying, okay, but my kid is covered in eczema, and the only thing that makes him be able to sleep at night is a steroid cream. I know that steroid cream is bad, but how am I supposed to replace it when this kid is completely miserable? As parents, we want to help our kids. We don't want them to be in those situations. And so that is a very common question that moms ask me is, okay, well, I know it's bad, but I don't know what to replace it with. And that's where we come in and where we're really hoping to help you. So it was around that time we went to 2 conferences that completely changed everything. Both gave us hope that our kids' brains could heal. One of them came from the perspective of giving the brain what it lacked, and the other was focused on our behavior towards kids. So those were 2 good pieces but they really weren't the full picture that we needed. We did learn that the frontal lobe of the brain could heal, and that's where attachment and impulsivity live. And we learned that grace-based parenting and feeding the brain what it was missing would help. Um, and we did get a specific list of supplements to help their brains get the fuel they needed. So now we had a plan, but there were still some problems. One of the biggest problems was the expense of the supplements we were giving to our kids. And also, if we ran out, their behaviors would worsen again. So we were paying hundreds of dollars a month once we got them off their meds. So though they were somewhat working, the stress about money was a big deal. Plus, we were trying to learn how to parent differently at the same time. And during all of this, we didn't know about homeopathy. And of course, we were still dealing with the night terrors. If you have ever experienced these, the name says it all. He would wake up in the middle of the night, but he wouldn't really be awake. He would wander around crying and screaming that there were apes and other scary things climbing through his windows. He would yell at us, but he couldn't see us. And he didn't know that we were there with him. We had to wait it out, try to comfort him, but he almost never could see us. And after about 2 hours, he would just climb back into bed and close his eyes. There were supplements that would make him sleep through sometimes, but he would wake up groggy and grumpy. And I also learned that melatonin, which is what a lot of people do use for this kind of thing. First of all, melatonin didn't work for him. But even if it had of, I ended up realizing that melatonin is not supposed to be used before puberty. It can cause trouble with puberty. And I didn't know that. So I'm kind of glad it didn't work for him because if it had, I probably would have latched onto it. But melatonin is not really supposed to be used in kids that haven't fully gone through puberty yet, or, past, they need to be at least 13, 14 years old. And so what I found was, I think looking back, there were some supplements that we used that actually were suppressive, which is part of what separates homeopathy from other modalities, because homeopathy never suppresses. It simply helps the body heal and balance itself the way it was meant to be. We finally found a homeopathic combo medicine that solved his night terrors and enabled us to get him off clonidine in just a few short weeks. If I had known what I was using, it would have saved us so much money and the kids probably would have healed faster, but I didn't know what homeopathy was then. I just knew that what I was using was natural. I didn't have any idea what the ingredients were. And it was probably a God thing that I stumbled across this combo remedy. He knew how badly I needed sleep after sleeping on an air mattress for 10 months. In the end, after about 3 years, our kids were pretty much able to learn and live like normal kids, but it was very expensive and the stress of it was intense. And we had to keep them on those supplements even throughout their teenage years. And this is Dakota a few years ago, hanging out with some friends of ours. And as you can see, now the smile goes all the way to his eyes. So when our youngest was a senior in high school, I finally landed on what would have made that whole situation so much easier. And it happened because my husband had a stroke in his mid 40s. I knew about all the natural things, at least I thought I did, but it wasn't until Tim had a stroke that I understood what I had been missing and that I was going about everything the hard way. The hard way was taking a million supplements and paying so much every month to keep up with them. It was being uncertain about what was working. It was going to naturopaths, functional doctors, and holistic doctors who really didn't have a super different approach. They still were pretty much just peddling supplements. And I couldn't get my kids on board for all the pills once they got a little bit older. Once they got to be about 15, they all just sort of like were done with the supplements. And even though they still really needed them to feel their best, they didn't want to swallow all those pills anymore. And of course, I was spending upwards of $450 a month on supplements, and that was a single income family. I was a mess. We were a mess financially because we were spending $15 a day just to keep our kids on these supplements. And I still didn't have a really clear path and still had some things that were going on. And I didn't have a lot to show for my efforts because now they weren't taking the supplements anymore. So if you have been struggling, you might have been struggling for the same reasons as I was. The stress of trying to figure out how to help your family, it keeps you running in circles. The doctors you go to seem so confident and they make you feel silly for suggesting something else might be better. And there's so much information out there. It's hard to know what's good info and what isn't, and it makes your head spin. And I know I wished for something reliable when I was in your shoes. I wanted something that would be safe and gentle, but really powerful. Something that wasn't going to require me to sell my firstborn child. And you may have come here tonight out of pure curiosity and are worried that this is another dead end, but I assure you it isn't. Tonight, I'm going to start you on the road to learning what I wish I had known all the way back in 2007. And we're going to start with this topic of antibiotics. We're going to teach you how to replace antibiotics for 3 different common situations in the next 25 minutes. But first, a really brief lesson about homeopathy. Some of you may not actually know what it is, and I do want to give some foundational information before we dive in any further. First of all, homeopathy doesn't interfere with any allopathic medicines you may be taking. All homeopathic medicines are Latin words and are universal throughout the world. So you're not going to be looking at words that were created from a marketing team. Everything that you see on a label of the name of homeopathic medicine is the original Latin word for that plant, and it's universal throughout the world. So a homeopath in Mexico could talk to a homeopath in India, and they would know what remedies they were talking about. Potencies are the numbers and letters that come after the Latin words. So if you see 200C or 6C or whatever, that's a potency. Homeopathy works on the concept of like cures like and is a 300-year-old system of medicine. Like cures like just means that symptoms that if a remedy would cause symptoms in a healthy person, it will cure those same symptoms in a sick person. It's gentle, doesn't suppress, and it's safe for every age and during pregnancy. Homeopathic medicines are manufactured in regulated pharmacies and can be purchased directly from those pharmacies. And even on Amazon, even though we say, we don't love Amazon, we want you to go directly through the pharmacies. And it is actually way more expensive to get them on Amazon. Sometimes, if you are in a dire situation and you have Amazon Prime, that's the only way you can get it quickly because it is hard to find them in actual stores. So we get it. So we are going to go through this tonight in the following way. First of all, we're going to talk about how homeopathy can be just as powerful as antibiotics. We're going to talk about my mom's dangerous eye infection that proves that it is a force to be reckoned with. And we're going to teach you some powerful medicines about soft tissue infections. We're going to talk to you about how you don't have to be a homeopath to help your family. Serious health issues can feel overwhelming, but Nicole's experience with an ear infection and pink eye proves that you can utilize homeopathy even before you know that much about it. And finally, the fast track to learning homeopathy when you need it most. Feeling unprepared to use homeopathy in urgent situations is pretty normal. But Nicole's story of overcoming a serious skin infection shows how quick access to the right community makes all the difference. And we will give you the remedies exactly that she used. So we're going to start with my mom. My mom and her horrible eye infection. This is actually a post I made on social media when that happened. This was about 2 years ago. Excuse me while I take a drink of my tea. I had left town on a cruise. My mom got really sick while I was gone. And the doctor terrified her. Her doctor told her that she was going to be, her infection was going to go to her brain if she didn't start on antibiotics. And it scared her into it. Even though she has reactions to antibiotics, she went ahead and took the antibiotic and she had a reaction. She actually, she has high blood pressure already and her blood pressure skyrocketed. It was over 200 on the top and on the bottom it was like 125. So that's the point at which my husband had his stroke at 225 over 125. So she was really worried when that happened. And of course, she only took 1 dose of it and then didn't know what to do. So she called her doctor again. Her doctor told her to go to the emergency room and that they were going to admit her to the hospital and put her on an IV drip of that antibiotic and give her other medicines to counteract the reaction she was having. That was the solution. My brother called me in a complete panic. He did not want her to go. And I had just gotten home from a cruise that morning, I believe. And I was so tired, but he's like, if you don't come over here, she's going to go and admit herself into the hospital. And now this was during when COVID was still a thing, like there were still people going into the hospital, especially old elderly people, and never coming out again. And I did not want that for my mom. So I raced over there with the remedies I knew that would help her. And I said, Mom, if you'll just give me 2 hours, I think we can make a shift in this in 2 hours. If it makes a shift, if the homeopathy makes a shift, will you not go to the doctor, not go to the hospital? And she said that she agreed. And I said, if it doesn't work, I will drive you there myself and sit there with you myself. And so that's what we did. We gave her the remedies. Within 2 hours, she actually was already seeing a reduction in her swelling, and she actually noticed it. I don't know if you can see in that picture how big it is on your screen, but that first picture was, I took that when we arrived. I took pictures of this because, and this is a good tip for you guys, when you're dealing with a homeopathic um, solution for something. Let's say you learn this and you're doing really well with it and you want to help somebody you love. Take pictures of what is going on with them when you start and as you go along, because people forget how bad their things were and they don't think homeopathy is working because it isn't fast. It isn't going to immediately, well, sometimes it does, but it doesn't always immediately just make everything go away. Sometimes it does, but often it doesn't. Why? Because it's not a big bossy pants. That's why. All of those medicines that everybody else takes that are synthetic, they're big bossy pants medicines. They go in there and they say, and they stuff everything down and they beat it up. And that's the way it works. And so as a result, it's like the body's like, okay, 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 and it seems like it's getting better when in reality, it's just pushing everything deeper into the body. Homeopathy is gentle. It says it arrives at the door, it rings the doorbell. It says, Hi, may I come in? And you say, Sure, you can come in. And it sets up shop on your couch and it says, May I ask your permission to touch your eye? And it's very, very, very polite and gentle. And so as a result, it sometimes works a little slower than other things. And you have to remember that. So I took pictures of this entire situation because I wanted my mom to be able to see the progress. That first picture was when I first got there. And I didn't show the other pictures because there were too many. But 2 hours later, I took another picture of her eye so that she could see that now she had a slit where she could open it and see out. And that first picture, her eye is completely swollen shut. She could not open it without prying it open with her fingers. And so after 2 hours, the swelling had gone down by about 20-25%, and she actually could see out of that eye. And she noticed that that was working. And so I left the remedies with my brother, giving him instructions to give them to her every 2 hours because this was a very severe infection. And she went to bed. She slept really hard. He had to actually wake her up to give her the medicine because she was sleeping so hard, which means that it was working. That's another thing. When people who have a really bad illness fall asleep after you give them a remedy, that almost always means it's working because sleep is the body's reaction to being able to heal. That's what you do. When you sleep, you heal. And so she fell asleep. I took a picture 3 days later. I came back so I could take a picture. And as you can see, her eye is completely open. She's able to see out of it. And it's still, you can see the color around it is off, but what you can't really tell in the picture is how much lower the swelling was. I mean, it was really a lot less swelling. And then that's day 7. I actually accidentally saw her in the Walmart parking lot. That's why she's standing in the parking lot. I went in to get groceries and I came out and there she was. And I was like, "Whoa, your eye looks amazing. Can I take a picture of it?" That's what we did. And by that time, she was like, "Oh, I forgot about it." I'm like, "Oh my goodness. A week ago, you're panicking and wanting to put yourself in the hospital." So, anyway, it took about 10 days for it to completely go away. But another thing to say about this story is that my mom had chronic eye infections prior to this. It would happen probably every 6 to 8 months, she would have an eye infection. And that happened 2 years ago, and she has not had an eye infection since. So not only did it take care of the acute issue, but it took care of what was probably a deeper issue that was going on with her, and she's no longer having the eye infection. So I think that's a pretty solid story, um, illustrating how that homeopathy is just as powerful as antibiotics. So I'm going to tell you the remedies I used with her and give you a little bit of background too. These are the four remedies I used. It's important to note that arsenicum album, I used Hepar sulf, arsenicum album, and hypericum um, the first couple of days. The arsenicum, I noticed was not working the way I wanted it to. Um, there were reasons for that I'm not going to go into, but I just knew it wasn't working. My mom knew it wasn't working. And so we switched to Apis. And when we switched to Apis, I mean, it was amazing how much the swelling went down. So we did that after about 2 days. So this was the first three is what I started with, and it did work very well. But the arsenicum album was actually, I believe it was causing her eye to be a little bit itchy. Nothing major, but just a little itchy. Arsenicum is a remedy for itching as well. And so if your body doesn't need it, then you'll have a mild itching sensation until you stop taking it. Not a big deal. Um, People get really freaked out about that, but what I think is funny about that is they get freaked out that they might have a teeny bit of itching if they take arsenicum, even though if they stop taking it 3 hours later, the itching will go away. But they don't get freaked out by the fact that the medicine that they take every day can cause heart attack, stroke, and death. So I don't really understand why people freak out about that. But they do. So that was why I stopped her on the arsenicum and replaced it with the apis. And that was a good choice. All of which to say education, 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 because your case will shift. You may need to make a change. And when you make that change, you want to be an informed person that can make it with confidence. And that's why education is so important. And so with that, I am going to um, I am going to restate that homeopathy is absolutely as powerful as antibiotics when you know what to use. And the best way to know what to use is to get education, and then you'll be able to face almost anything. It took me 25 years to learn that supplements, oils, grinding grain, milking goats was not the only way to heal my family. And I was like a rooster Pearl. I was making progress, but I was walking around half blind. Poor Pearl has feathers all over his eyes. He can't see anything. And that's kind of the way I was. Pearl could walk, he could see right in front of him. It's not like he couldn't function, but he didn't have the full picture. And that's the way I feel it was that I was before I found homeopathy. And I think Pearl is just a funny way to illustrate that, because isn't that the most comical looking chicken you've ever seen? I love those kinds of chickens. They're called Polish chickens. If you're into chickens and you want some, they're super fun and they're really easy to catch because they can't see you coming. Anyway, so who does this work for again? Moms, grandmas, beginners, new to alternatives, experienced with alternatives, curious people with open minds. So as you contemplate what I've just taught to you, I would like to point out that this modality can be used by anyone. And I'm super excited that you're going to be using homeopathy to fight infections in your household in no time, because as you learn it, you'll discover it's just as powerful and effective without causing the harm to the gut and the side effects that antibiotics can cause. And the homeopathy help hotline membership is going to be, I feel like, your best, fastest, and cheapest way to education so that you can learn all of this stuff yourself. It's already got stuff loaded in there, recorded videos and articles teaching you how to use these medicines and the specific protocols created by medical homeopathic doctors for many common acute and chronic issues. But again, more about that later. Let's move on to the next way you can use homeopathy instead of antibiotics. And this is one of the things that we want to illustrate to you, that you don't have to be a professional. You don't have to be a homeopath to help your family. One of the things that I notice with newbies to homeopathy is the fear of messing up. And I get it. You want to do things right, and you certainly don't want to cause harm. But armed with a little knowledge, even a newbie can make a huge difference. So let's talk to Nicole about her story and about what happened when she was first learning about homeopathy. Nicole, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Sandra, for that beautiful presentation that you just gave. And so in the beginning, guys, we mentioned that I'm a registered nurse and I'm now a homeopath and I'm a mom to 7 children, right? But I didn't start out all of those things, right? So I started out as a conventionally trained nurse. I was very conventional minded. My first, 3 children, had antibiotics and steroids and over-the-counter medications and all the things that we're, essentially exposed to in our culture, right? And I became chronically ill myself, and within that, I started to go down the holistic route. And I, like Sandra had mentioned in some of her stories, I started to learn about, nutrition and herbs and supplements and oils and all of those things. And I had great success with a lot of those things, even for my younger kids, my second half. Um, so I used a lot of those things, but there was still something missing, right? And the key for me that was missing was homeopathy. And as a mom, when you see these infections happening to your children, the first thing that you want to do usually is, if you're new at this, you want to run to the doctor and you are told to take an antibiotic because that's all that they really know. When you get into the holistic world, there are other modalities that can sometimes help, but sometimes we're left feeling like we had to turn to the antibiotic. And that was the case that I was in multiple situations where if I had another choice, I would have chose homeopathy had I known about it. So, I was probably like some of you guys that are on tonight, where I kind of felt a little bit stuck that in the holistic world I was learning, that antibiotics had side effects too, and that they could be suppressive, like Sandra talked about. So there was some situations where I didn't really want to give those things to my children anymore, but I didn't know what to do. So in comes homeopathy, and I used homeopathy and my children, my last 3 children, have never had an antibiotic. They've never had a steroid. They've never had to use an over-the-counter like a Tylenol or a Benadryl or any of those things. So I just want to give that background that I was always able to use homeopathy for their conditions. And the more confidence and the more education that I got with homeopathy, the more I felt comfortable using these things. So this picture is my daughter. She had a case of pink eye. You guys can see in the first picture that she had some redness, she had some swelling, there was some crusty drainage happening, it was itching her, there was a little bit of pain. And I used a couple of remedies that I would normally use for pink eye. There are various remedies that we can use for a pink eye situation. And again, like Sandra said, education is going to be super important for you guys to utilize this modality. But the second picture is her eye after 3 days of using homeopathic remedies. So in just 3 days, my daughter's eye went from swollen, puffy, painful, crusty to completely clear, and there was no antibiotics used in this. There was no trip to the doctor. And again, I want to just kind of back up and just say to you guys too that this is a child who has never had an antibiotic before. So Sandra kind of mentioned before that sometimes antibiotics can have side effects, sometimes they can suppress. So when I choose to go the homeopathic route, I'm choosing that knowing that there are side effects to medications, and my daughter could also potentially have a side effect to a medication. So I have to weigh those things out. So my first go-to in my children is homeopathy because there are no side effects, as Sandra has mentioned. There's no side effects in homeopathy. There is something called provings, which she just kind of touched on slightly with that arsenicum. And as you guys learn more about this, if you don't already know, you'll learn, like Sandra said, that that is not something to be worried about. We want to be more concerned about suppressing a condition that can show up and come back later, and also the side effects that can happen from some of these drugs. So that is this is my daughter who had pink eye, 3 days, guys, no antibiotics. And then Sandra, do you want me to tell the ear infection one? Okay. So I don't have slides for the ear infection. But again, a mom who, was confident with homeopathy at this point, but I was not a homeopath yet. But I knew that antibiotics, again, could be suppressive. It could have side effects. And so, the other thing that we don't always talk about or touch on too is a lot of times ear infections can also be viral. A lot of these infections can be viral. Even pink eye can be viral and not bacterial. So when you're choosing to use an antibiotic, you're also, potentially using an antibiotic that could also destroy your gut or have side effects, and you maybe didn't need it. Because how many of you guys have taken your children to the doctor and they've ever tested to see if it was bacterial ear infection? Or a viral ear infection, or a bacterial pink eye or a viral ear infection, right? Never. Who's ever heard of that? They don't know, right? So this is another reason why wouldn't we be choosing the least invasive opportunity, the the
Mhm.
the less harmful opportunity before we make the choice of the one that could have potential risks. Why? Because you guys didn't know this stuff existed, right? And so now you guys know. So my son, he came downstairs and he had some ear pain. And with that ear pain, I have an otoscope home, so I looked in his ear, but maybe not everybody has one of those, right? So the remedy that I actually chose for his ear pain is not only good if there is an ear infection, but it's also good if there's just ear pain in general, right? So again, I could skip the doctor's visit by giving this safe homeopathic remedy. And if I need to go to the doctor, then I could choose the antibiotic later if I want to. But I had homeopathy, so I gave him the remedy. Um, a couple of hours later, he comes back downstairs. His ear was bright red, it was warm, and it was painful. And that showed me, based off of the knowledge that I now have with homeopathy, that this called for a different remedy. And so, what I ended up doing was I gave him a different remedy. And when I gave him that remedy, he went upstairs, he went to sleep. He never complained of any more pain. He woke up the next day. He was completely pain-free, never turned into an infection. So again, I don't know. Was it an ear pain? Was it an infection? Did it matter? No, because my son was completely side effect free. We skipped the doctor's visit and he was completely fine. So those are just a couple of my testimonials that I have with my children, and choosing that. So some of the homeopathy that
Mhm.
can be used for ear infections specifically, belladonna is really great for any infection that might have a hot, red, and painful look to them. So when you see swelling, heat, redness, pain, belladonna is a remedy that you could consider using. Pulsatilla is another one that is commonly used for ear infections. Chamomilla is another one again, also, and Hebar Sulf. Hebar Sulf, guys, for those of you guys that are just getting into homeopathy, Sandra had talked a little bit about potencies in the beginning. So if you're brand new to that, don't worry. Come join our membership. We'll teach you all about it. But for those of you guys that are just learning about homeopathy, Heparin sulf is a really great remedy for any soft tissue infection. So it could be an ear infection, it could be a pink eye, it could be skin, it could even be sore throats and strep throats. Heparin sulf is a wonderful remedy. In the homeopathic world, we actually refer to it as a homeopathic antibiotic. So those potencies that Sandra talked about, you definitely want to own this remedy in a 6C, a 30C, and a 200C. And as you learn more from us, we can get into more reasons to use that remedy, but definitely stock up on that if you're looking to avoid antibiotics. And then homeopathy for pink eye, again, there's many, many remedies that you could use. These are some of the top three remedies that you can use for pink eye. So again, belladonna. Belladonna was actually one of the remedies that I did use in my daughter's case because again, she had that redness and that pain and that swelling, so that was really good for a belladonna pink eye. Pulsatilla is another option for pink eye, and then again, that Hepar sulf, we're gonna see that over and over for infections. All right, so you can use homeopathy. Sandra, you're muted. Is this you?
Yeah, I started talking and realized that no one could hear me. Thank you, Nicole. That was awesome. I
No
appreciate you telling
problem.
the stories.
Thank
We're going
you.
to come back to you here in another minute with some more, but the bottom line is you can use homeopathy in your home effectively to avoid using antibiotics, even as a beginner to homeopathy. One of the very first things I solved was was my husband's 20-year long struggle with depression. That's kind of a big deal for a beginner. It wasn't necessarily something that happened easily. I did have to dive in and learn some things, but that's why I love practical homeopathy. So somebody in the Q&A was saying, I always thought that homeopathy was something that was so complicated that you had to go to school for years to learn it. And I would say that that would be true if you were learning classical homeopathy, but practical homeopathy is different. That is what we teach, and it is an approach that can be used by anyone. It's very accessible. And as we get into educating you guys, we can give you more information about what the differences are. But you can use homeopathy in your home effectively to avoid using antibiotics, even when you are just getting started. So that's pretty exciting. Um, and as you just heard from Nicole, this knowledge we're giving you today can absolutely be the thing that empowers you to start as soon as today to help your family with common infections that arise with your kids, your grandkids, and yourselves. You will be able to avoid the gut killing antibiotics that suppress disease and can even cause chronic illness later in life. Inside the Homeopathy Help Hotline, you will learn even more about taking back your family's health and getting empowered to be the true healer in your family so that you can avoid doctor visits. You can avoid using gut killing drugs. You can help your little ones truly heal instead of suppressing their illnesses. And you can avoid creating chronic issues later in life. So, who here thinks that the homeopathy help hotline is awesome and is going to help them? I think maybe we're talking you into it here. So we want you guys to make this work in your own home. And by the end of the night, you're going to be able to make a decision to start making it work for you and start learning at your own pace in our membership. So, next thing, fast track your homeopathy journey. The fast track to learning homeopathy when you need it most. A lot of us feel unprepared to use homeopathy in urgent situations. So we're going to talk to Nicole again and talk about her story of overcoming a serious skin infection to demonstrate how quick access to the right community makes all the difference. And then we're going to give you the exact remedy list that she used. So, Nicole, let's go back to you again to talk about your daughter's staph infection.
Yeah, okay. So like I just shared with you guys, at this point, we had given up the use of antibiotics because we had, outweighed the risks for our family. Some of my kids, like I said, had never had an antibiotic, so there was always the potential for them to be allergic to them or for them to react to them. So we would always try homeopathy first, and then if that wasn't effective, then we knew that we could go to antibiotics. And so when my daughter had a bacterial skin infection, and ironically, actually, my husband had the same infection. And he actually did choose to go the antibiotic route for himself. And he did, in fact, even though he was in his 40s at this time, actually have an allergic reaction to those very antibiotics after one dose. And then quickly put it down and was like, okay, what do you have for me with homeopathy? So, again, in my family, at this point in our journey, we had already been using homeopathy for years. I felt very confident in using it. I was already, homeopath, I was already teaching. And so I felt very confident in its effectiveness. But my husband, like I said, he kind of questioned, he said, "Hey, I know this stuff works really great for headaches and fevers and his back pain. We've helped with his back pain and things like that." He said, "I know this stuff really works for that, but can this stuff work for a bacterial skin infection?" And that is a point where some of you guys might get to, whether it be a bacterial skin infection or a strep throat infection or Lyme disease is another one that's a really big thing. And this infection had indeed actually started by a tick bite. So I just want to point that out because that's the route that we were looking at this from a tick bite perspective initially. So I had to really dig deep and weigh in here and decide, what was I going to do, right? Was I going to potentially, use the antibiotic and cause an allergic reaction potentially? Was I going to suppress this condition deeper, like Sandra had mentioned that antibiotics can sometimes do? Was I going to potentially destroy her gut with these antibiotics, or was I going to use everything I knew about homeopathy to help with this skin infection? And the protocol that I actually used can be found on Joette Calabrese's website. She is our mentor and who we learned from. And so I felt very confident in using it. But this is the importance of community, right? So I was getting my protocol from my mentor, essentially who I learned from. But I also reached out to my study group partners. Sandra was actually one of my study group partners in school. And I reached out to that group at the time and said, "Hey guys, like, am I doing the right thing? Do you got, and I knew that I was, but I needed that confidence, guys,
And look
because
at that first picture. That's why you were scared.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, anybody would be worried about that.
yeah,
And
this
so
was
it makes sense.
right. This was a serious infection. And then I actually had reached out to, some of our other leaders and some of our past mentors and reached out to them and got that community backing. And everybody that I talked to said, "Hey, sounds like you're doing the right thing here." And that community base was so important for me because most people don't know what homeopathy is. And I think that fear around not knowing, and like we talked about in the other stories, of not having any other options, or maybe knowing that there are other options, but not really knowing where to go with it, having that community support you in something serious like this is really what's going to help you guys grow and gain the confidence and be able to trust in this. And again, is there a time and a place for antibiotics? Yes. And if I had to take her or we had to go that route, we would have. But I weighed the risks versus benefits for her. And after one dose, this was the results. And then if you want to go to the next slide, Sandra. This was the second and third dose. So this is how quickly this infection started clearing. And I wanted to just tell you guys that, this infection was also on her face, it was on her elbow, it was on her belly because any opening, like any cat scratch or any opening that she had, this infection traveled to very quickly. And so she had it everywhere. And it was highly infectious. And this is the results that we had seen within a couple of doses, right? Not even a couple of days, like a couple of doses. And it was so miraculous that my husband was like, if he wasn't a believer before, he definitely is now. And so I just wanted to share that story with you guys because, homeopathy can treat some of these more serious things, and the fear may keep you away from using that. But I do want you guys to always remember that there are side effects to conventional drugs and there are not side effects to homeopathy. And if you know what you're doing and you're surrounded by the right community of people, sometimes we can help you out further if you don't know what you're doing, or if you do know what you're doing but you just need that community aspect, we're going to be here for you.
That is awesome. I love that story. And it really does show that homeopathy can be used for serious infections and illness. It's when you have pictures like that, it just really does. Pictures really do speak a thousand words because you can have something that's happening in your lungs or whatever, and you can't see it, and it's a little bit different. Although I do have an amazing lung story for another time. Um, something that is to this day, I'm like, I cannot believe that happened. But
It will
homeopathy
shock
for the
you.
win. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean it was unbelievable, miraculous. So that I will tell that story some other time. But um how many of you would love to know how to get results like that? So it does prove that antibiotics are not the only solution. And I know that you guys would love to be able to do that for your families too. And I think you will be able to use it, especially if you have a community of people learning with you and supporting you. And I like that part of Nicole's story because he was nervous. You would be. That first picture was pretty scary. And she asked all of us in her community to help her out and support her. And she was trying to protect her daughter's gut and avoid antibiotics and maybe even worse things. And having a community that you can depend on that becomes real friends is incredibly important when you're trying to learn a new paradigm. And I know, like on Facebook, I'm on a lot of groups on Facebook that are like, homeopathy or toxin free or whatever, like lots of different Facebook groups. They have thousands of people in them. Like, you're not going to make a friend probably on a Facebook group. But when you are able to get into a community where you are showing up for live meetings like this, and instead of the chat being turned off, you can chat and you can actually come on camera and ask questions and discuss things with each other. You really do start to get to know other people and make friendships with like-minded moms that really want to help their kids in the same way that you do, and you're all learning the same information, and it just really starts to be an important part of your life. I know we're still friends with all those people that were in our study group when we were doing all of that. So it is a really important thing and something that can get you through and help you have the courage to do what needs to be done. So let's go back over what we've learned. We've learned how homeopathy can be just as powerful as antibiotics because antibiotics suppress and have side effects, and homeopathic medicines do not do that. But they're just as powerful and even more effective because they work with your body. We learned about soft tissue infections that can be combated with Hepar sulf, arsenicum album, antimonium crude, apis, among others. We also learned you don't have to be a homeopath to help your family. And you can start right away helping your family heal with just a little information, like the fact that belladonna, pulsatilla, and Hepar sulf can resolve pink eye and ear infections. And finally, the fast track to learning homeopathy when you need it most. Urgent and scary situations can also be solved homeopathically. Nicole solved a super scary staph infection using Hepar sulf and Hyper R's after getting recommendations and support from her homeopathic community. So if you use homeopathy, start your education about remedies and utilize your homeopathic community, then you will be able to avoid doctor visits more frequently and deal with health issues that you have effectively at home. You will become your family's healer, which even just saying that out loud gives me chills. Like being your family's healer is amazing. How many times now since I've become a homeopath have I helped my mom, who I am almost certain would have been injured by the hospital system by this time through this whole COVID thing. And she wasn't injured because we knew how to keep her out of the hospital. And I think all of us understand the importance of that after going through what we've been through in the last 4 years. So that's a really, really cool thing to be your family's healer. So let me ask you a question. After hearing all this information today, are you guys excited about homeopathy and using it more fully yourself? My guess is yes, but you may be like this lady in the picture and be a little bit overwhelmed. And this is where we come in. So we're wondering if you'd be interested in having our help. Are you guys okay with me telling you more fully about our membership and where you can get more help to understand and use homeopathy? If that's something that you want, could you just type yes in the Q&A? I don't think you can see anybody else's yeses, but we can see your yeses. And I want to make sure that we've got permission to tell you more about what we're doing. Okie dokie. So let's go ahead. Got some yeses here and look at what this membership is and how you guys can use it. So as a founding member of the Homeopathy Help Hotline, we are actually doing a founding member drive because founding members are special. And the time for signing up as a founding member will be relatively short. We're doing this because we're still loading in a lot of our training into the membership, and the Materia Medica section is very much in progress. You may not even know what a Materia Medica is yet, and that's okay. But just so you know, you're going to be super excited to have a Materia Medica that's online that you can access when you are looking things up without having to buy, one of those big expensive books. Although I recommend buying one eventually. In the beginning, that can be really overwhelming. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible, but we're still loading all that stuff in. We want to have a group of people who are willing to give us feedback and use the membership first so we can work out the kinks. We want you to tell us what isn't in there that you want to see. We really, really want that kind of feedback. And so we're going to offer it for 75% off for annual members and 70% off for monthly members. And you will get that price forever as long as you don't cancel. And as promised, just for being here today, we also are going to do a special thank you gift. Somebody in this group is going to get a free annual membership tonight. So that's pretty exciting. And we have a lot of stuff in here: training videos, online Materia Medica, PDFs and articles, collated homeopathy news and studies, live Q&A sessions with us, which I'm telling you what, we are going to have so much fun. Private community, homeopathy cheat sheets, and the private community, I just want to go back to that. Facebook is not kind to people who like alternative medicine. And, I think they're tolerating us, but we really don't know how much longer that's going to be. And you want to be able to keep connected with people that you are becoming friends with. And so that's why we're doing a private community. It's not robust yet because we're just getting started. So we hope that you'll be patient and not expect the moon yet. But it is something that we're going to build so that we have our own place to talk and share things. And we can say things that are really like things that could potentially get you kicked off Facebook. We don't want to do that. We don't want to get kicked off, but we also want to have a place to talk. So that's why that private community is important. You're also going to get a homeopathy cheat sheets. I'm going to show you what those look like here in a minute. And members only discounts on courses. We have several, we've made a whole plan for 2025 of the courses that we're going to be teaching this year. You're going to get 30% off of those forever. And founding members discounts on swag, 30% off of swag, and first dibs on homeopathy retreats. We are going to be having an amazing homeopathy retreat. I'm sorry, my nose is like giving me itchy problems tonight. Um, it's because of this dry air in Indiana, although today it did rain. Um, first dibs on homeopathy retreats. We've got one in the works. It's going to be for fall of 2025. Hopefully, eventually we'll be able to have two a year, but for now it'll just be one. And these will be small. So we're talking less than 20 people. So you are going to want to have first dibs because as this community grows, we're not going to be able to, have everybody that's a member come to the retreat. So you'll get first dibs. You will have to pay for them, but you'll be the first people that will be made, have that offer. And that's going to be a really big deal when we get those going. So just to reiterate, recorded video content. This is really worth more than $600, but I'm just trying to give you an idea. There's a lot of content in there that took hours and hours to do with slides and education, and it's probably worth more than $5.99. But I'm just kind of giving you an idea of what things are worth. The online Materia Medica is in there too. I really liked this picture. I have no idea. It just looked like Latin, and so that's what I that's what I put on here. But it does say Materia Medica, so I do think actually it might be Latin. Ours won't look like that, just so you know. And PDFs and articles, members only blogs. That's also going to be on there. And then these are our homeopathy cheat sheets. I say worth $99 because the ones we have ready would be worth that if we sold them. But this is the Busy Mom's Guide to Homeopathy. Some of you might already have this because it's one of the things that you can get if you're in our Facebook group. You can go to simplehomeopathywellness.com/Facebook if you're in the Facebook group and get this Busy Mom's Guide to Homeopathy. For signing up for our trainings, our ABC trainings, which are short versions of what we're going to have in the membership. Then we have the live Pick Our Brain Q&A sessions and our live topical trainings. These are going to be amazing. This is what I'm really excited about because not only will we do these live, but all of the recordings are going to live in the membership. So you are going to have this entire library of just a wealth of information at your fingertips. These are going to be answering your questions that you have. So you're going to send in your questions ahead of time, and we're going to have the answers ready. And then you're going to be able to talk with us to clarify if you don't understand what we're talking about. And then we're also going to have topical sessions that are going to focus more like on one topic at a time. And they're going to be more like mini courses. So these are all going to happen every month. The Pick Your Brain will do twice a month. And then the topical one will happen once a month right before the Pick Your Brain session. So the three of us together, I know I've done most of the talking tonight, but the three of us actually all know how to talk really a lot. And so don't worry, we'll be able to handle two sessions in a row because all three of us will be tag teaming and taking turns with all of that. So you're going to just love that.
Sandra, can I just add really quickly? Hate to interrupt you, but
No, go ahead.
you guys that are on our first Pick Your Brain session is actually going to be December 15th.
Which is
So
this Sunday.
yeah, so if you guys are not in the membership yet, you're going to be able to get one of those Pick Your Brain sessions like right away. So that's something that you'll have access to for the very first one. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Go ahead.
Thank you. That was a good reminder. And then, of course, the 30% off swag and courses and early access to the retreats. That's all going to be in there. So again, and I've skipped a few things, I think. But today we're going to do 75% off, and you don't have to pay what it's worth because founding members are going to get this pricing forever. So 75% off annual members, and monthly members are going to get 70% off. So again, this works for everybody. It's for anybody who's open to learning, moms, grandmas, beginners, new to the world, or old hats at alternative health, or just curious people willing to learn. And if you had to pay full price for this, it would cost a lot. We have put countless hours into building the content we're still loading into this site. I've been working on this personally. We all kind of started working on this by ourselves. And then we all realized that we were all working on a membership. And we were like, this is dumb. Why don't we do this together so we don't have as much work? So that's what we're doing. So most of the content in there right now does it is mine because I'm also the tech person. So I've been gradually loading things in for like the last year. But Nicole and Heather, we are continuing to add their stuff in, and it's just going to do nothing but grow. And we're super excited about it. So if you had to actually pay full price, it'd be a lot. I put a price tag on this of $2,000, but honestly, education that's ongoing like that is probably worth a lot more. But the annual cost for you guys is $119.99. That means a full year. You pay it once for the full year. And or if you can't do that, $12.97 per month. So most of us spend more on Starbucks in a month than that. And this is like could be the difference between life and death for a family member. And I say that I'm not saying that tongue in cheek. This is the type of education that people often wish they had when they're faced with a situation like what my mom was about to do. She was about to go into the hospital during a time when a lot of elderly people were not making it out of the hospital. And I know, sadly, I have family members that didn't make it out of the hospital. And in my opinion, it was the fault of the people that were supposed to be caring for them that they didn't make it out. And I hate to be so harsh, but not all the nurses and doctors out there are really all that concerned about the well or the health of elderly people. I know that sounds horrible, but a lot of the really good nurses and doctors during the COVID times in certain areas did get pushed out. And it was rough. I have friends that were nurses that had to leave because they were being asked to do things that were not ethical during that time.
Sandra,
And
can I
yeah,
just add, I'm sorry, I have to interject here
you
too because
do. That's fine.
I just had this conversation with my 18-year-old son today where we were kind of talking about that because I did work with the elderly. That was what I did in nursing. I worked with the elderly and they got hit the hardest during that time. And now that my son is 18, I was explaining to him a little bit about the system too. So it's not even just the nurses and doctors, it's the whole system. And I was kind of explaining to him how the system really is set up, where even when there are good people in there, it just doesn't work. And my son said to me, Mom, wouldn't you have wanted to stay in the system to help people? And I said, honey, I did for a really long time. And I was told by doctors that I was just a nurse. So I did a lot of advocating and was, not really heard. And there was only so much that I could do from the inside. And so I had told him when COVID actually hit that I had told my husband that it was already a broken system and I saw it becoming more broken and that I wanted to put myself in a place that I could help from the outside in. And this is what we're doing now, right?
Yes, this is what you chose. And I
Yeah.
think I'm
Like,
so glad you did because if it weren't for people like you that can tell the tale of what has been going on, no one would believe us.
Right.
No one would believe what is happening. And when we were in Florida, I talked to a nurse practitioner, I talked to a doctor, I talked to several nurses. They all had the same story that during COVID, things happened that were absolutely unimaginable. And they had to step away and have their own. A couple of them started their own private practices. One nurse practitioner actually took it upon herself to make house calls with a oxygen machine to keep elderly people out of the hospital because she knew that they would die.
Yep.
And yeah, so you want to be able to get the education you need to help your family in these situations. And I'm not trying to be a fear monger. I'm not really. I don't. I don't like that. I'm not driven by fear, but I'm also a person that I know. I know what needs to happen when I see what needs to happen. And this information needs to get into your hands. So you don't have to depend on somebody like us when the stakes are high and you're sitting there at 3 o'clock in the morning with your elderly parent and you're going, okay, I could take them into a hospital system that might hurt them, or I can give them something homeopathically instead of an antibiotic, and they'll probably get better and they'll probably live through this. And of course, there's times when you don't have a choice, but we want to give you as many tools as we can to make sure that you're okay and you can do that. So that is the membership link, simplehopeopathywellness.com/membership. And I don't know, Heather, is there any way that you could copy and paste that? I know there's several people in here and you may not get through all of them, but maybe you could copy and paste and send direct messages to everybody so that they have an actual link to click on. Um, and we can do it that way. I don't know if that would be okay. And in the meantime, Heather, while you're doing that, I'm actually going to go ahead and take care of that drawing for a free membership, if you don't mind. I'm just going to roll the dice here. Let's see here. There's a little, hang on, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go over here and get this. Because we are going to give away a
Excited
membership.
to win a membership at this point. I hope you guys are
Yes.
so super excited to win a membership
I
tonight.
know, I know. Well,
Thank
let's
you
go.
guys so much for, sticking through and waiting to hear who's gonna win.
I know.